Donald Trump spent years bragging he was the smartest kid in high school, the misunderstood genius the elites tried to hold back. But on this night, Stephen Colbert didn't laugh, didn't joke, and didn't play nice. He simply opened an old folder, looked straight into the camera, and began the slow, brutal public demolition of one of the biggest myths in American politics. Later that same night in New Hampshire, Donald Trump stood under the bright stage lights, leaning into the microphone like he was about to share a secret with old friends. His voice dropped lower than usual, almost quiet. "I was a genius in high school," he said, pausing just long enough for the crowd to lean in. "People don't know that. I was the best student. Teachers used to come up to me and say, 'Donald, you know more than the textbooks.' I was a high school legend." The words hung in the air for a second, and then the arena exploded. Cheers, whistles, and loud applause rolled through the crowd like thunder. Trump nodded slowly, soaking it all in. He loved this part. He repeated it, louder this time. "High school legend. That's what they called me." The audience ate it up. They clapped harder. Some people even stood up, chanting his name. Trump's smile grew wider. For a moment, all the questions about his age, his rambling speeches, and his slipping sharpness seemed to disappear. The crowd wasn't just listening, they were believing. Then he leaned even closer to the microphone, eyes narrowing a little. "And let me tell you something. If the elites hadn't been holding me back, if they hadn't been jealous and trying to stop me every step of the way, I would have changed history back when I was just 16 years old. 16! Think about that." The reaction was instant. The entire hall rose to its feet. People were screaming, clapping, waving signs. The energy in the room felt electric. Trump stood there, chest out, nodding like a king who had just reminded his kingdom why they followed him. For those few minutes, the myth was alive again. Donald Trump, the misunderstood genius, the guy who was always smarter than everyone gave him credit for. But 300 miles away, the mood was completely different. In a quiet television studio in New York, the lights came up slowly, soft and low. There was no opening music, no band, no warm-up guy cracking jokes, no flashing applause signs, just silence. Stephen Colbert sat alone at a simple wooden desk. His hands were folded neatly in front of him. The desk was almost empty except for one small yellowed index card sealed inside clear plastic. He didn't smile. He didn't move. He just sat there staring straight into the camera with a calm, serious look that made the whole studio feel heavier than usual. The audience in the studio seat stayed quiet, too. They could sense it right away. This wasn't going to be a normal late-night show. Something was coming. Something real. Colbert finally spoke, his voice low and steady. "Last night, the former president told another story about being a high school genius." He let the words sit there for a moment. "He said he knew more than the books." Colbert paused again, then slowly reached forward and picked up the plastic-sealed card with both hands, holding it carefully like it was something fragile. Then he lifted the card slowly and held it up toward the camera. "Last night in New Hampshire," he said in a calm, steady voice, "the former president told everyone he was a genius in high school. He said teachers told him he knew more than the textbooks." Colbert paused for a second, letting the words sink in. "So we decided to check." He turned the card slightly so the camera could catch the faded ink and worn edges. "This is Donald J. Trump's end-of-term chemistry assessment from the New York Military Academy. Spring 1964. The big screen behind him lit up with a clear scan of the old document. Colbert started reading, slow and clear. No rush. "Donald is the most confident student I have ever encountered. Unfortunately, this confidence is entirely unneeded by knowledge." A few nervous chuckles broke out in the studio, but they died fast. Colbert didn't even flinch. He kept going. During laboratory sessions, Donald refuses to participate in experiments. He frequently delegates tasks to younger cadets, offering payment in exchange for their work. He then presents the results as his own. Colbert looked straight into the camera. Just to be clear, that's not leadership. That's cheating. The audience shifted in their seats. The laughter that came next felt uneasy, like people weren't sure if they should be laughing or not. Colbert continued reading. When experiments fail, Donald refuses responsibility and redirects blame. My favorite example is when he blamed the laboratory table for being weak and poorly constructed. This time the laugh was louder, but it still carried a nervous edge. Colbert set the card down carefully. He leaned forward a little. But maybe science just wasn't his thing. A genius doesn't have to be good at everything, right? Before anyone could answer, Colbert reached under the desk and pulled out his phone. He looked at the camera and said, "Actually, let's ask someone who was there." The big screen switched to a live video call. An 82-year-old woman appeared. Her white hair was pulled back neatly, and her eyes were sharp even through the screen. She looked a little nervous, but her voice came through clear and strong. "My name is Mrs. Eleanor Hayes," she said. "I taught chemistry at New York Military Academy in 1964. Donald Trump was in my class." She took a breath, then kept going, her voice shaking just a bit. It wasn't just that he didn't do the experiments. He paid younger cadets to do the work for him. Then he put his own name on the reports. I caught it more than once. And yes, I still have the original gradebook from that year. I took photos of the pages before I left the school. The proof is right here. She held up her phone to the camera, showing clear images of old handwritten grade sheets with Trump's name and the low scores marked in red. The studio audience gasped. Colbert nodded slowly, still not smiling. Right then, a notification popped up on the big screen behind Colbert. Trump's official Twitter account had just posted. The tweet flashed huge. "Fake news! Fake teacher! This woman is lying! Total witch hunt!" The audience murmured. Some people laughed in disbelief. Colbert glanced at the tweet and raised an eyebrow. "Well," he said calmly, "looks like the former president is watching tonight." He turned back to Mrs. Hayes on the screen. "Ma'am, anything you want to say to that?" The old teacher looked straight into her camera, her voice steady now. "I taught for 38 years. I have no reason to lie. The records don't lie either. Donald Trump cheated in my class, and he never once took responsibility for it." The studio fell quiet again. Colbert looked back at the camera, his face serious. Colbert set the chemistry card aside and reached under the desk again. This time he pulled out a thicker stack of papers, the edges yellow with age and covered in red ink. He held it up so the camera could see the handwriting. "Let's move on," he said, still calm, still not smiling. "This is a history assignment from the same year. The task was simple. Summarize the causes of the American Civil War." He cleared his throat and started reading exactly as it was written, word for word. The Civil War was very unfair to the South. Lincoln was nasty, very nasty. If I had been there, I would have made a deal, a beautiful deal. He stopped and looked up at the camera. The studio was dead silent for a second, then a wave of shocked laughter rolled through the audience. Colbert didn't laugh with them. He just kept going. "The grade on this paper," he said, turning the page so everyone could see, was a big red minus. He pointed to the teacher's handwritten note scrawled across the bottom in bold red ink. "You cannot negotiate with slavery. Please see me after class." The laughter came harder this time, but it had a nervous bite to it. People were shaking their heads, some covering their mouths. Colbert let the moment sit before he spoke again. "That note was written in 1964. The same year Trump says he was a high school legend who knew more than the textbooks." Before he could continue, the studio phone suddenly lit up. The producer's voice cut in through the speakers. "Stephen, we have an incoming call. It's Donald Trump." The audience gasped. Colbert raised an eyebrow but stayed completely cool. "Put him through!" A second later, Donald Trump's voice boomed through the studio speakers, loud and angry. "Steve, you're a loser. A total loser. Those papers are forged. Fake. This is a witch hunt. Everybody knows it." Trump was talking fast, almost shouting. You could hear him breathing heavy, like he was pacing somewhere backstage or in a car. Colbert didn't raise his voice. He just leaned forward a little and spoke clearly into the camera. "Mr. President, we have the original document right here. It has your signature at the bottom. Would you like us to show it on screen?" Trump cut in immediately, louder this time. "You're lying. Everybody's lying. Those teachers hated me because I was better than them. This is all rigged." The studio audience sat frozen. Nobody moved. Some people looked at each other with wide eyes. The tension was thick. Trump kept talking over the line, trying to steamroll the conversation. "I was the best student. I made deals even back then. These so-called papers are nonsense." Colbert waited a beat, then picked up the history paper again. He raised his voice just enough to cut through Trump's rant. "Actually, sir, let me read the full opening paragraph one more time so everyone can hear it clearly." He started reading louder and slower, every word sharp and deliberate. "The Civil War was very unfair to the South. Lincoln was nasty, very nasty. If I had been there, I would have made a deal, a beautiful deal." Trump tried to interrupt again, his voice rising. "Stop it, Steve! Turn that off! This is fake news!" But Colbert kept reading right over him, his tone steady and calm, almost like he was in a classroom. And the teacher wrote, "You cannot negotiate with slavery." The studio audience was holding its breath now. You could feel the shock in the room. Trump was still on the line, yelling, but his words started to sound more frantic, less controlled. "This is ridiculous! I'm not listening to this garbage!" Colbert looked straight into the camera while Trump kept shouting in the background. "Mr. President, the document is real. The signature is yours. And the teacher's note is still there in red ink, 60 years later." Trump tried one last time to cut him off, his voice cracking with anger. "You're a joke, Colbert, a total joke." Then the line went dead. Trump had hung up. The studio stayed quiet for a long second. Colbert set the paper down gently on the desk and looked out at the audience. "Interesting," he said softly. "Even now, he still wants to make a deal." Then Colbert reached under the desk one last time. This time, he pulled out a thick, worn book with a dark cover. The pages inside looked old and brittle, typed on an old typewriter. He rested his hand on it for a moment, then opened it slowly. "This," he said quietly, "is the guidance counselor's report from 1964. It was written about Cadet Donald J. Trump when he was 16 years old." He started reading, his voice steady and clear. "Cadet Trump demonstrates an intense need for admiration. He reacts poorly to criticism, often interpreting it as a personal attack rather than feedback." The studio audience sat completely still. No one laughed. Colbert kept going. When praised, Donald displays charm and energy. When challenged, he becomes hostile, dismissive, or theatrical. Colbert looked up. The counselor even used the word theatrical. "That's old school talk for making a big scene." He turned the page. "Donald frequently exaggerates achievements. He speaks of future success in grand terms, often detached from present performance." A low murmur moved through the room. Colbert didn't stop. Now this is where it gets uncomfortable. He read the next line slowly. The counselor was asked one direct question. "Does this cadet demonstrate leadership potential?" Colbert paused, letting the silence build. The answer was yes, but with serious reservations. Donald possesses confidence that attracts followers. However, his leadership, relies on dominance rather than trust. He seeks loyalty without accountability. The words landed heavy. People in the audience were leaning forward, faces serious. Colbert closed the book for a second, then opened it again. There's one more paragraph the counselor underlined. Before he could read it, the big screen behind him lit up with an incoming video call. An elderly man, 79 years old, appeared. His hair was thin and white, but his eyes were sharp. He looked straight into the camera. "My name is Dr. Richard Harlan," he said, his voice a little shaky but strong. "I was the guidance counselor at New York Military Academy in 1964. I wrote that report." The audience gasped. Colbert nodded respectfully. "Dr. Harlan, thank you for joining us tonight. You've never spoken about this before." The old man took a deep breath. "I'm speaking now because I'm tired of staying quiet. I wrote every word in that report. In 1964, after I submitted it, Trump's family threatened to sue the school if the document ever saw the light of day. They forced the administration to seal it. I was told to sign the order myself. I did what I had to do back then. But today, I'm not afraid anymore." He looked directly at the camera, his voice growing firmer. "And there's something in that report that was never made public. Let me read it for you." Dr. Harlan held up his own copy and read the underlined paragraph clearly. "If given power without structure, Donald may prioritize personal validation over collective responsibility. He is most dangerous when surrounded by affirmation." The studio went dead silent. The weight of those words hit everyone at once. Right then, the studio phone lit up again. Trump was back on the line, and this time he was furious. "You're a liar," Trump shouted, his voice cracking with rage. "You're a complete liar, old man. I'll sue you. I'll sue all of you. This is defamation. Fake news." His words came out fast and broken, louder than before. For the first time all night, the audience could hear Donald Trump completely losing control. His voice wasn't smooth or confident anymore. It sounded raw, almost desperate. "I was a great student. Everybody loved me. You're making this up to hurt me." Dr. Harlan didn't flinch. He looked calmly at the screen and answered, "Mr. Trump, I wrote this when you were 16. I saw you every week. This wasn't politics. This was observation. And every word of it has held up over time." Trump kept yelling, his voice getting higher and more strained. "You're finished, Harlan. You hear me? Finished. I'll destroy you in court." Colbert stayed perfectly calm. He looked straight into the camera while Trump continued shouting in the background. "Dr. Harlan, one final question. Why are you coming forward now after all these years?" The old counselor answered without hesitation, "Because warnings matter." And this one was buried for 60 years. People deserved to know what was written before he ever ran for office. Trump screamed one last time, "Liar! Total liar!" Then the line went dead again. Colbert gently closed the counselor's book and looked out at the stunned audience. "Patterns," he said softly. "They don't disappear. They just wait." The studio stayed quiet, the air thick with tension. No one was laughing now. Colbert sat back slightly and looked straight into the camera. The studio lights dimmed just a touch. Behind him, the big screen came to life. "No more words from me," he said quietly. "Let's just watch." The screen began playing side-by-side clips. On the left, black and white scans of the 1964 counselor's report. On the right, recent footage of Donald Trump. First line appeared, "Intense need for admiration." Cut to Trump at a rally, crowd chanting his name. He pumped his fist and shouted, "They love me. They all love me." Next line, reacts poorly to criticism. Clip of a press conference. A reporter asks a tough question. Trump snaps, "You're fake news. Disgraceful." Then exaggerates achievements. Trump on stage, "Nobody's ever done more for this country than me. I'm the best. Believe me." Leadership relies on dominance rather than trust. Clip from the White House. Trump pointing at a general. "You're fired. I don't need disloyal people." The clips kept coming, perfectly matched to every sentence in the old report. No voiceover, no jokes. Just the words from 1964 flashing on screen while Trump's own voice and face played right beside them. The audience watched in silence, eyes wide, connecting the dots themselves. The pattern was impossible to miss. Colbert let the final clip fade out. The screen went dark for a moment. Then the video call system lit up again. Mrs. Eleanor Hayes, the 82-year-old chemistry teacher, was back. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she said, her voice steady this time, "but I have more to show you." She held up her phone to the camera. Clear scans of the original 1964 grade book filled the big screen. Trump's name was there in neat handwriting next to failing marks. Then she switched to an old scanned email. "This is from one of the younger cadets Donald paid to do his lab work. He's 70 years old now, a successful businessman in Chicago. He sent me this yesterday when he heard I was coming on the show." The screen showed the email and then a clear photo of a faded $20 check. The signature at the bottom was unmistakably Donald J. Trump. The date, April 1964. The memo line read, "For chemistry lab report." Suddenly, a new window opened on screen. The 70-year-old former cadet appeared live. He looked serious, wearing a button-down shirt, sitting in what looked like a home office. "My name is Michael Reynolds," he said. "I was a freshman at the academy in 1964. Donald Trump was a senior. He offered me $20 to do his chemistry experiments and write the reports. I did it because I needed the money. He signed this check himself and told me to keep quiet. I still have the original check in my safe. I kept it all these years because I never felt right about it." The audience murmured loudly. Some people whispered, "Wow," under their breath. Colbert nodded. "Mr. Reynolds, thank you for coming forward." Before he could say more, Trump's voice suddenly blasted through the studio speakers again. The production team had kept the line open. "This is ridiculous," Trump shouted. "Turn it off. Cut the mic. These people are all liars." He kept yelling, trying to talk over everyone. But this time the microphone stayed hot. The production crew didn't cut him. Trump's voice filled the entire studio, raw and angry. "I never paid anybody. Fake. All fake." Then, without warning, Trump stopped talking. The line stayed open. For 12 long seconds there was nothing but silence. Dead silence. The camera stayed on Colbert's face while the whole country could hear Donald Trump breathing heavily on the other end, unable to find words. The studio audience didn't make a sound. It was one of those rare TV moments where time seemed to freeze. 12 full seconds of pure, uncomfortable quiet while the former president was caught with nothing to say. Finally, Colbert broke the silence, his voice gentle but firm. "Mr. President, the receipt is 60 years old, and it's still valid." Another beat of silence. Then Trump's voice came back, quieter this time, almost hoarse. "You're all against me." The line clicked. He was gone. Colbert looked out at the audience, then back at the camera. The weight of everything they had just seen and heard hung in the air. "Patterns," he said softly. "They don't break easy." Dr. Richard Harlan was still on the screen, his 79-year-old face calm but tired. He looked straight into the camera like he had been waiting decades to finish what he started. "There's one last line in my report," he said quietly. "I never read it out loud before tonight." He took a slow breath and read the final underlined sentence. "The boy does not learn when corrected. He retaliates." The words landed like a hammer in the silent studio. No one laughed. No one shifted in their seats. The audience just stared, letting that simple truth sink in deep. Dr. Harlan gave a small nod. "That's what I saw at 16, And that's what I still see today. Before Colbert could thank him, the studio phone exploded with sound again. Trump was back on the line, but this time he didn't shout right away. His voice came through sharp and fast. "I'm done with this garbage. I'm hanging up. You hear me? This is over." There was a loud click. The line went dead. Trump had slammed the phone down for good. Colbert sat still for a moment, then turned directly to the camera. His face was serious. No smirk, no punchline. "Tonight," he said slowly, "we didn't expose a scandal. We read a receipt that was written before he ever ran for office, before the rallies, before the TV shows, before the White House. These documents were sitting in a file for 60 years, waiting." He paused, letting every word hit home. "Teachers saw it. Counselors wrote it down. Administrators tried to bury it. But the truth doesn't disappear just because someone seals a folder." Behind Colbert, the big screen changed. 3 original documents appeared side by side, crystal clear. The chemistry assessment with the line about confidence entirely unneeded by knowledge. The history paper with the red minus and the note about not negotiating with slavery. The thick guidance counselor's report open to the final page. Right in the center, Trump's own signature from 1964 sat bold and unmistakable on every page. Next to the documents, a faded black and white photo faded in. A 16-year-old Donald Trump in his cadet uniform, hair neatly combed, staring at the camera with that same confident look he still wears today. The audience stared at the split screen in total silence. The boy from 1964 and the man on the phone tonight looked like the same person. The pattern hadn't changed at all. Colbert didn't rush. He let the images stay up for a long moment so everyone watching at home could burn them into their minds. "Warnings matter," he continued, his voice low and steady. "Someone tried to tell us early. They wrote it down. They filed it. And for decades, we chose applause instead of paying attention." He leaned forward slightly. "Tonight wasn't about politics. It was about accountability. About the cost of pretending that loud confidence is the same thing as real competence. The boy who refused to do the work, who paid others to do it for him, who blamed the table when the experiment failed. That same boy grew up. The stage just got bigger." Colbert glanced at the screen one more time, then looked straight into the lens. "The receipt is still valid." He paused for several seconds, the studio completely quiet. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said, "Class was never dismissed." The studio lights began to dim slowly. The big screen faded to black. No music played, no applause. Sign flashed. Just darkness. In the center of the now black screen, simple white text appeared and stayed there. The warning was always there. The show ended in total silence.